This is the Convene podcast. My name is Maggie, Digital Media Editor. Welcome to another episode of the Convene Talk. Jen, tell our listeners more about today's topic.
Thanks, Maggie. Sure. So I thought it would be interesting to chat this week about CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. Last week, CTA, which is the Consumer Technology Association, it's the trade group that puts on CES, for anyone who doesn't know, they revealed an entirely new brand for CES. And it's interesting because it's a lot more wrapped up with CTA. For example, the logo says CES and underneath it says powered by the Consumer Technology Association. So Laptop magazine writer Nick Lucchesi wrote about this and kind of talked about how for a long time CES has kind of overshadowed CTA and that this rebranding may help to change this perception. The rebrand also comes at an interesting time. This year is CTA's 100th anniversary. Earlier this year, they announced their first woman president, Kinsey Fabrizio, who I actually got to chat with last week by chance for another unrelated story for our cover story on networking. And she had some exciting things to say about this rebranding as well. So the next show, the next CES show, 2025, will be the first to use this new branding. So I just thought it was interesting. It was an interesting move. I'm curious to know from, especially you, Maggie, just from your background, if this is something that, we've seen or maybe will see from other groups whose shows are a little bit more well-known than the groups themselves. I also thought it was interesting. I found another article that was written earlier this year in Fast Company by Harry McCracken. And he wrote about how CES survived, is the headline, how CES survived the great tech show meltdown. And he talked about how in 2024, he attended CES after not attending for 7 years. And he had attended many, many years before that. And he wrote about how CES is really interesting because it's one of the tech shows. First of all, it's the biggest tech show that there is now. But for a long time, there were a lot of other tech shows, and those have kind of disappeared. But CES has done a really great job of sticking around, even through the pandemic. And if you look at their numbers, they're definitely down compared to pre-pandemic, but they're still around, and it's still the biggest show of its kind. And one of the things that he said that, was remarkable about it is that it's a show that really embraces its size. So I want to read a quick quote from the article where he said, CES has done an intrepid job of evolving to reflect tech's never-ending, always expanding role in our lives. And he said the Consumer Technology Association, the trade organization behind the show, seems happy to welcome any exhibitor with a story involving technology, from corporate giants to startups to government agencies. This help keeps the halls full. And on a higher level, it also accurately reflects an era in which it is tough to partition the topic of tech into tidy subdivisions. So yeah, lots to dig into there, but I'd love to know what you all think about this move, this strategy to rebrand. Yeah, Maggie.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for the intro. Actually, what you pointed out, the fact that CTA is kind of the unknown part of the CES brand, reflects, I believe, many event professionals or PCOs situation. Their brands are so much more well-known that who stays behind. So that was the thing that immediately stood out to me. And I was like, yeah, of course. I mean, I had no idea who CTA was because I had never done the research. And in my previous position, we've had many conversations on the value of the company, the organizer behind, and if that's important thing for people to know. So when you are, let's say, organizing a medical congress, do participants really need to know who's the event planner behind? I mean, yes, when they have a problem, they'll definitely find out who to reach out to. But other than that, what's the value, right? And we've had that discussion so many times over the years. There are kind of two parts. So yes, you want, let's say, the attendees to know about you because they can potentially become your customers if they decide to organize their own event or if they become an elected person, right? In the given association, they take this prominent role and they can pick and choose the professional congress organizer. Then it's very important that you are already in a good standing in their eyes. So they know the brand, they know the value, they've experienced your quality. But then for those that are in niche subject areas, and sometimes these doctors kind of need a partner to create these niche events that can potentially become something bigger with time. Then they again need a partner and they need to know that you're not only a professional congress organizer, but you can also support them on that path because you've done that before. And I think that's potentially what CTA also has in mind, even though it was not spelled out in the article, but bringing their brand or their name as the organizer in a more prominent place, and they put it on the logo. I mean, more prominent than that cannot be. I think it will be a bit more for their benefit. And again, I was thinking they're an association, like who is a member of that association. So maybe that's what they want to attract, those people that can become members to the association, or potentially if they're rolling additional products or different shows, maybe that's just another thing that people would recognize and say, okay, CTA organized it. So we know there will be a very good quality when it comes to the stuff that they will present. So it's interesting. In terms of the logo itself, I saw that there were some comments. I think it's always hard to comment on the quality of a logo. It's so personal and it's so hard, I think, for designers to come up with logos that people love. And I was also like, is it a satellite? What is it? But I think we just
Yeah, it's a
all
bit
get used to
conceptual.
it. Is.
We'll link to this in the story notes because there's CES. They also relaunched their website, like their entire, like when you Google CES and it comes up and you can read all about the brand, like that's completely been relaunched too. But yeah, I was reading about the logo. It's like a laptop. Hold on, let me find the link. But it's, yeah, you definitely need an explanation, I think. But once you see it, then you kind of get it.
But then if you think about the old logo, the two kind of squares that overlap, it's not that it's like more brainy or that it makes more sense, but we're just so used to it that we're like, yeah, I mean, we kind of liked already the old one. So I actually smiled when I saw it at the end that they included the designer's perspective on the quality of the logo. I mean, it's a logo. We'll all get used to it. It's fine. Michelle, what do you think?
I don't know that what I have to say is much different than what you said, but maybe it's just a different kind of spin on it, which is that I think certainly the event got bigger, eclipsed the organization, right? So CES eclipsed CTA. And I think this is a struggle for a lot of associations. All of their efforts tend to be on a one-off event, but they struggle to have year-round engagement with their members. So I think this is part of like really trying to rethink what an association's value is, and not just to produce a one-off event, but to have more engagement throughout the year. So it's not just like a brand identity thing to me. I would imagine it is to also strengthen the association, because I do think that all associations are struggling to really have a value proposition for next gen. What we've heard is the impetus to join an association isn't as big as it used to be. So I think this is part of that effort to make the association healthier, to engage with more people year round, and not to just have all of its efforts completely consumed by one event. That's my take. Anyway, what do you think, Barbara?
Thanks. I'm very curious about the timing of this and the relationship between just the power of a few big companies that are AI. Just the power of like open AI. And when I looked at the history of CTA, it started out as radio producers, and it was radio. They were like fighting patent infringements. And I feel like that maybe speaks a little bit to this timing.
That's so
Because
interesting.
because I just think that, it's away from the actual devices, which, a lot of the innovation now is AI related. And if that is in the hands of a few big companies, and there's also like a lot of legislation. I know here in California, there's legislation that I think might be signed by the governor this week that companies operating in California have to have these safety plans, and they have to look at like the catastrophic possibilities or potential of what AI could do. So I'm wondering about just them all, the companies having a voice, lobbyists, but also just as a way to handle this very new, very big tsunami change, which is kind of from its inception, like radio came on the scene. And then, so I see that you're nodding. Casey, what are you thinking?
Thanks, Barbara. I was also making the connection between, the huge recent rise in AI and this new logo and rebranding, particularly because of the logo that we were talking about earlier and the explanation that they gave around it. For those who are just listening and maybe aren't going to look at what we're talking about, it's described as a parallelogram resembling a laptop monitor that intersects with a sphere. And the explanation behind that was that it's representing the role that CTA plays in the world, facilitating a connection between technology and humanity. And that specifically kind of spoke to me to how AI is becoming such an important part, I'm sure, of what CES and what CTA are all about. But they also want to keep that human connection and show that it's about their people. And I just thought the timing of that was very interesting, given how much we talk about AI these days.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of big companies rebrand. We were talking about TED, and I'll link to that episode for those that want to listen to it and our take on it. And I noticed that TED are actually launching an AI event themselves in Europe. So that's interesting how they're all going places, kind of intersecting.
So do you think that graphic in that logo is supposed to be a screen? That rectangular shape is a screen?
I think so. Yeah.
And then that's the globe, right? The circle. So interesting. I don't see the relationship with human there. It doesn't feel like they're incorporating human, except, Casey, maybe to your point, an association is more human, the people behind it.
What do you the globe? The globe is the people.
The one thing that it actually, when I read the description, of course, I was trying to find it. To me, it seems like a human face that's like it's open. If you imagine you have like on your face a door that you can open. So that's kind of what it reminded me of, and it can be a bit far off.
Oh, so maybe the circle is a face, you're saying.
Yeah, that's kind of open to the world of technology, let's say. But again, I can see a lot of things in this.
And it's getting slapped by a laptop or what?
It's maybe like it's intentionally vague. So
it's becoming one with the laptop.
I did not get anything out of that logo from any of the explanations, but I'm glad they put underneath it powered by the consumer, whatever it is, our Technology Association, because CTA in Chicago is the Chicago Transit Authority.
Oh.
Yeah. I noticed that when I was Googling CTA, I was like, it kind of.
And in California, it's the California Teachers Association.
The transit are going to be like, wow, there's a spike in interest.
Yeah.
But for me, it was click-through rate. So
yeah,
call to action.
Call to action.
Yeah. So it's like You can attach it.
Yeah,
Whatever.
but that's actually call to action is not a bad. That's not a bad thing to have as the background kind of association.
I think logos are kind of, I won't say impossible, but I think they're almost impossible because I think that, the logo designer has this vision and they can see it clearly or whatever, but maybe nobody else can. And you don't even know if anybody at the association who had to approve it knew what it was until it was explained to them. And then they said, oh yeah, that's so cool. Let's go with that.
But maybe it's like intentionally vague. Remember the logo for the Olympics, and everyone was saying like it looks like a French woman. Like if you looked at it like slightly differently. And I think that's interesting if you do kind of leave it a little bit, I guess amorphous, just like kind of like it could be like a couple different things. That way people talk about it.
Yeah.
It creates a conversation.
I never even noticed the Olympics, the individual Olympic logos. I just noticed the Olympic logo.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm talking about Paris specifically. Yeah.
I think it got there. That logo actually got criticized for looking like a woman.
Well, they were like,
I think it's perfect because it was the first Olympics to have gender parity.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a French woman. I feel like it's, the cute, chic little bob. Fits the brand.
I'll be curious to see how this changes the structure of the event, if it does. If there'll be like different, if they'll reorganize anything, if the programming will be different. That's going to be interesting. I don't know if I forgot her last name, but the CEO, Kinsey, did she speak about that at all, Jen?
We didn't dig into it a lot. I had kind of had a limited time frame, and I really wanted to pick her brain about networking and some of the things that they do to bring women together in the tech space. Which she did seem very, very, very excited about it, but I didn't get too much detail on if and how future events will change due to the rebranding. But yeah, I'm curious to see as well how it does seem like there is a lot of change afoot, like in the organization. So, with Kinsey, her background, she has been part of CTA, I believe, for more than a decade, like well over a decade. And working on CES was a big part of her role then and will be now going forward. So yeah, it's interesting to see what will happen in 2025.
Or if it was marketing, realizing they had 100th anniversary without doing something special about it. I'm like, hold on.
Yes. Good point.
I loved what you had to say, Barbara, earlier about where they started and where they are now, which they really do encompass every single facet of technology that exists out there. And they started within an area that was so niche and specific. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's what associations are for, right? To grow and develop with its field. And I think they've done a fantastic job. And I hope they are not focusing on the fact that CTA is the lesser known brand and that they'll keep on doing a good job with CES because everybody knows CES.
Yeah, it is interesting to just see their brand changes over the years because they were CEA before they were CTA, which was Consumer Electronics Association. So the CTA, it seemed to me to represent a shift towards, these electronics are not, they're moving into the center. Like every company's a tech company now. And now it feels like it's moving into like how much individuals use technology, in every facet of their life. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I'll share a link, Barbara, with the history of CTA so people can dig into that. And I want to thank you all for the discussion as always. If you enjoyed this episode, do give us a 5-star review and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And for more industry insights, visit pcma.org/convene. Until next time.